Guests, it is an enormous privilege for me to welcome you all on behalf of the Committee of Leicestershire Law Society to our annual Civic dinner. This presidential year marks 155 years in the life of this society. I will be speaking a little later about some of the society's historic moments. As you may have guessed from the names of your tables and the order of service, the theme for this evening is Historic Leicester. You will also find on your tables, for anyone who is curious about their table names, a booklet which tells you a little bit of information about the person and their connection to Leicester. Before dinner is served, however, I would like to say a few special thank yous. You'll have to forgive me, as the list is quite extensive, the Society having grown from strength to strength over the years. We are proud to have as our sponsors for this evening, in no particular order, the Miller Partnership. Pete and Tracy Miller can be found on the table named after the first ever president of Leicestershire Law Society, Joseph Harris. The Miller Partnership are specialists in tax, in buying and selling businesses, and in working closely with legal teams in obtaining clearance from HMRC. If I'm correct, and forgive me if I've got this wrong, Pete, I think he was in a former life a taxman. I hope I have got that one right. Easy Internet Solutions Limited. Mark and Diana Esho are seated on the table named after a Leicester suffragette, Alice Hawkins. They've been around since 2000. They pride themselves on making the internet easy for Leicester-based businesses. They trade as FBS Hosting. Their aim is to make business. Evening, we have the Rick Basra Leukemia Campaign and Sparks with us. Rick Basra is himself a survivor of leukemia and for some of you, I'm sure he requires little introduction. Last September, in 30 days, Rick and Kaz added 2,078 names to the Anthony Nolan Stem Cell Register. They made history by making Leicester a life-saving city. Sparks is another charity that I'm supporting this year, and they work with children from the ages of 0 to 13. Their aim is to use the arts to broaden experiences and understanding, to make sense of the world, to imagine the unimaginable, and in doing so, invest in a brighter world. You will find David Bell and Carrie Carruthers from Sparks on the Joseph Harris table. After dinner, we will have the honour of hearing from two of my very special guests, Professor of English and former Bishop of Leicester, Tim Stevens. Professor of English, may I start again? Professor of English and Local History, Kevin Shorer, and former Bishop of Leicester, Tim Stevens, who has come specially from Bury St Edmunds to join us this evening. And here's the reason why I was emotional at the start of this talk. Before I hand back to Jeff, I would just like to mention Helen Johnson. We have had an enormous achievement this. Helen has achieved something enormous this year. She was awarded National Advocate of the Year by the Law Society, and I think we need to recognise that enormous achievement. Thank you very much. Please enjoy your meal.
Thank you.
Good evening. I hope you've all enjoyed your Indian food. It was slightly different, I think, from Indian food that we have in Mehmooda, but I do hope you've enjoyed it. My inspiration for the theme this evening, for this civic dinner, is this one gentleman in the room, David Hughes, who I met on the eve of my presidency, or the evening before I took office. I met him in the beautiful grounds of De Montfort University, and we had a lovely chat about his book. This is his book, The Leicester Law Society, 1860 to 2010. David wrote this to basically capture as much as possible about the first 150 years of Leicestershire Law Society. I've spent the last couple of days speed reading this book. I did read some of it, I have to say, during the year, but last 2 days I thought I need to know more so that I can tell you a little bit about it. So be careful what you wish for. I keep telling myself I want to go back to university, I want to study, I want to do these things. Well, I've been studying and I'm back at university and I feel as though I'm sitting an exam. Many presidents before me have find some evidence which tells us exactly what happened at that very first Law Society meeting, and I've kept it in this blue Tesco packet actually, so that I don't, a Waitrose packet, to make sure I don't lose it. But I'm going to share with you what it says. I have here, I'll tell you what this is. This is the order for the centenary dinner, and this was done in 1961 when it was 100 years of the Law Society. And at the time, the Book of Proceedings, or what they did was... 1935 onwards, however, dinners were held at the Grand, Devonshire Place, the Marriott, the City Rooms, and many early dinners, believe it or not, were held at the university. And I'm delighted that we've come back to the university to have our civic dinner here. It was 1950 when the public nature of the annual dinner was established. So having members of the public here, having dignitaries here, that only happened from 1950 onwards. And at the centenary dinner in 1961, there were 360 people. This order of the order that I have, there is actually a plan in there, an enormous plan, which is amazing. So anybody interested, it really is, that there's 360 people who were at that dinner. And anybody who's interested, you're more than welcome to have a look at that. I'm sure this belongs to Steve Swanton, so I'm sure Steve would be very happy to let you have a look at it, as long as you keep it in the blue Waitrose bag. Lobbying Parliament, that's something we have always done, and we still do. I'm sure Edward Garnier, QC MP over there, will tell you, the Right Honourable Edward Garnier will tell you, we've been giving him a lot of grief. But 1865, the Society petitioned the House of Commons to reform the systems of courts, and a further petition the same year on the issue of stamp duty. So even in those days, lawyers found themselves facing almost identical. Rather, the first British Asian president was Ranjit, and we do have Ranjit in the room today, so that was a first. And I thought today was going to be a first again, because today, if Vera had been here, it would have been the first time that I'm going to be handing over in a moment to Kevin Shora, Professor Kevin Shora, who's going to be talking to you about another one of our forebears, but one that goes back a lot further than 1860. He's going to be talking to you about Richard III, who goes back to